All right, good afternoon. Go ahead and call this meeting of the Design Review Board to order. Dean, we need to do a roll call?
Well, just for roll call, we'll make note that we do have a quorum, so we are in business to proceed, and the only member absent at this time is Gary Martins. And as far as confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act has, the required notice has been properly provided. So with a quorum and with notice properly provided, we are authorized to proceed with holding today's meeting.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dean. We'll jump right into item 2.1, approval of the minutes of the December 12, 2019 DRB meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those? If so, were there any additions or corrections noted?
No. I move that we accept the minutes as presented from the December 12th, 2019 DRB meeting.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to accept or approve the minutes of the December 12th DRB meeting. All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. All right. And new business, item 3.1. Dean, would you?
Yeah, it's a real mouthful because they have a nice legal description for the Homewood Suites Hotel, and it's so suffice it to say the Homewood Suites Hotel, as you see, is under construction, is located on the north side of Mulberry between Santa Fe on the west and North Fifth Street on the east, and you can see that it occupies a number of lots on Santa Fe and Fifth Street. So this afternoon we have Guy Walker representing Lighthouse Properties 3, and they are the developers of the Homewood Suites Hotel. And item 3.1 is an application filed on behalf of Yaya's Euro Bistro. And so Dustin has for you that is the location and shape of the site of the Homewood Suites Hotel. And in your packets, just for your benefit, we provided you a background report that just shows how the sidewalk dining ordinance originated, how long it's been in place, and we've made some tweaks to it already after its original adoption. And as part of our downtown arts and entertainment ordinance efforts, we anticipate some additional changes. I think the two things we would focus on, as you will see from today's report, is that the initial draft had essentially a size cap of 200 square feet, which could be exceeded if the applicant provided additional justification for that size. What we're experiencing is that almost every application that's come before this board has been over 200 square feet in size, and they haven't been disproportionately large. But if you draft something assuming that every storefront frontage downtown is 25 feet, then it doesn't take into account a property like this that has more extended frontage, or like Old Chicago. So this application was submitted by Mr. Walker on behalf of Lighthouse Properties. We went through our the application requirements, and we have a signed application. We have the fee paid. There is a certificate of insurance, of liability insurance. We have a site plan in your packet indicating the proposed location. We have an outdoor fence design, we have canopy and support post designs, we have table and chair designs, and a plan for lighting fixtures. Two other things that if you're an existing operation that wants to add it, we get a copy of your Kansas food establishment license and a copy of sales and liquor tax reports. The reason for that is a establishment that is just a bar or tavern and serves no food cannot have a sidewalk cafe. So in order to be serving alcoholic beverages on the front sidewalk area, you have to be a food service establishment. So I think you're familiar. You've seen the hotel going up. It has 252 feet of frontage along Mulberry Street. There's 113 feet of frontage on Santa Fe. It's starting to take on its final appearance. It's 5 stories in height. It'll have 113 guest rooms. It'll have some meeting rooms, and it has 2 indoor dining areas, one set aside for Yaya's Euro Bistro and one set aside for Starbuck. So to get you oriented, this is Santa Fe Avenue here. This will be a doorway, entryway off of Santa Fe that you can take and eventually get to the hotel. But along that corridor will be entrances here for Yaya's and an entrance for Starbucks. And then there would be a set of restrooms right here that would serve both Yaya's patrons and Starbucks patrons. And I'll let Mr. Walker explain if I'm correct. There would be some set of doors here. There would be controlled entry into the hotel or open entry?
Controlled entry.
Okay. So there will be something that will divide those areas. This area right here is another outdoor dining area for Yaya's, and it is on private property. So what we're discussing is this area right here. And so they have a lease agreement with Lighthouse Properties for 5,500 square feet of area. Their plan is for upscale casual dining. They'll have indoor seating for about 126 and 2 outdoor areas. The plan is that this outdoor dining area would be about 9 feet wide, 58 feet long. There would be a 3-foot fence around it, and the seating plan we have is for 32 customers. So just for, this is a little different than some of the others we've had because if you could maybe zoom back, Dustin, I just was going to focus on the canopy. So this is the facade of the building. There's a canopy that would come out and then supports here. So a number of our establishments have had plans where they've just had a flush-mounted railing here, but no kind of cover or canopy. So this is different than some of the others because this will have a canopy attached, and the supports for the canopy and the supports for the fence will actually go right down to the sidewalk. So what the ordinance requests that the Design Review Board do is a step-by-step review that we'll walk through of the proposed location and its physical characteristics. So we've got the location out along Santa Fe. As we noted, the area set aside would contain 542 feet. The maximum size of an outdoor dining area under the code is 200 feet, but the code indicates that if sufficient information is presented by the applicant to demonstrate that an increase in allowable area is needed for optimum function, you can recommend to the City Commission that that larger dining area be permitted. We would point out that you should take into account the amount of street frontage a restaurant has in making such a recommendation. One of the things that we look at is there needs to be 15 feet between this and any other obstructions such as raised planters or light poles or the like, and the plan that we have indicates that there's no obstructions within 15 feet, and this will maintain the minimum 6-foot path of travel on the sidewalk outside the dining area. You're also to look at the separation barrier, its height, material, design, and durability, and Dustin had that up there, but they're looking at a 3-foot tall decorative wrought iron fence, and they're looking at square posts top and with vertical bars and a separation that would infill that. So that is an elevation of what the fencing would be. And again, for the the Kansas Alcohol Beverage Control essentially allows the serving of alcoholic beverages on the public right-of-way if there is some physical barrier between the public space and the private space. And so that barrier is there to separate out the alcoholic service and consumption area from the rest of the sidewalk area. One of the things that we look at is the ability to disassemble and remove the barrier without damage to the sidewalk and site when the use is no longer in use. And so most of the sidewalk barriers approved to date have utilized surface-mounted anchors, but they also haven't had a canopy to support. We had some discussions with our Public Works Department. This is a section of streetscape sidewalk that has not been finalized yet, so in talking with them, they indicated that they would want to work with the applicant and their designer, and essentially if this, they would wait to finish the sidewalk till this was installed first. The only concern would be that we'd want Mr. Walker to address, and which could be addressed in an ultimate license agreement, would just be if you're putting these types of footings down into the sidewalk, it's likely when this was ever removed that that could do some damage to the sidewalk, and we would want to ensure that the sidewalk will be restored to its original condition. So again, we just wanted to point out that this is, the other ones have been pretty much freestanding with surface mounted anchors, and so this is different from that standpoint. In terms of the furniture and its durability, all the furniture proposed that you have in your packet is rated for outdoor use and has a commercial use warranty. All of the items that get installed, we would need to make sure are maintained and remain in good repair. As we understand it, there's no plan to have any supplemental heating out in the sidewalk area, but there would be a plan for recessed down lighting that would be in the canopy area, and as we understand it, wall-mounted sconces on the exterior as well. And we do allow for background music, that there can be music on the patio. It just needs, it can't be audible from a distance of 50 feet or more from the source of the noise. Most of the signage is in place. Dustin was timely in putting this up as we talk about the canopies and awnings. So this is a pre-finished metal canopy. Extend over that area. It'll have a bronze taupe appearance. The City Commission has approved a different license agreement, a structural license agreement, to allow this canopy to be extend out over the right-of-way as a right-of-way encroachment. So that has been approved separately. And then we've provided you with some information about parking. I didn't know if you wanted to zoom out, Dustin, and this would be or go to the site plan and take the bird's eye view and zoom out a little bit. But just for reference, this is the hotel block, but over across the street will be parking, as well as parking here. And I didn't know, Mr. Walker, is Yaya's having any parking that's designated just for their patrons, or will they, it will just be general parking for the hotel and restaurants? And
that's the idea right now.
okay, so there's over 100 between over here, down on the south side of Mulberry, and here there will be over 100 off-street spaces, and the City Commission approved a license agreement to allow these angled spaces in the right-of-way, and those will be under the control of the hotel owners. So they will be designated for patrons of the hotel or the restaurants. So we don't think that parking, that will be an issue. So we have reviewed this application. It's been referred to me to review and comment on. The agreement, if approved, would allow the placement of these private improvements on the public property, and that can be renewed for a subsequent year. And as it's presently set up, the Design Review Board would review a renewal application, and that's one of the things that we're still looking at and looking to tweak, because the way that some of these have been set up, it's going to be a time for a renewal before some of these have really gotten up and running and operating. So we're going to take another look at the renewal process, but these are designed to be renewed on a, so they're not, this is the last you'll see it. We will monitor it. We will report back which ones are still active, if there's been any issues with any of them, and there will be a renewal process for the license agreement. And so some of the review things that you're to look at would be the existing and proposed structures, the neighboring uses, the pedestrian traffic circulation, the proposed operation, and the four main things you're to look at are, do you think this complies with the regulations that have been adopted for sidewalk dining? Do you think this proposed operation will contribute to the welfare of the public by increasing the vibrancy in Business Improvement District number 1? Do you see anything in this plan that would cause injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood? And is there going to be an adequate unobstructed walkway so this plan will not impede pedestrian traffic? So you have the ability to make a recommendation to the City Commission to approve the cafe license agreement. You could approve it subject to specific conditions. You could postpone consideration, or you could deny the application. Our main thing that we focused on is that the applicant, just for the minutes of today's meeting, provide some additional information about the need or desire for the outdoor dining area that's larger than 200 square feet. The plan before you is 542 square feet. And the justification that's been provided is the amount of frontage along Santa Fe, and so the plan only occupies 58 feet of the total 113 feet of frontage. And so as to the comments about the posts and footings, the two ways we've discussed addressing that is, one is the Public Works Department would be likely to hold off on final finish of this sidewalk till this was actually installed, and then we would try to address just assurances that the sidewalk will be restored back to its original condition. If it'd be difficult to imagine that this whole thing would be removed, even if the sidewalk dining should, for some reason, not occur in the future, we would expect the canopy itself to remain. So just because the sidewalk dining operation might cease, that wouldn't necessarily be a reason to remove the support posts and canopy. So on page, I think it's page 9 of your report, we just have some of the standard requirements that would apply to any sidewalk cafe, and then in attachment A to your report we have provided some possible findings. Number 1 being that this outdoor patio, including the fencing design and materials, would comply with all applicable provisions of the sidewalk dining ordinance, except for the size of the sidewalk dining, which exceeds 200 square feet. However, the hotel has 113 feet of frontage. The additional outdoor dining area would be justified by the size in comparison to the total hotel facade, and that the dimensions are needed to provide adequate seating and circulation and would not impede pedestrian travel. And then the third possible finding is that this proposed outdoor dining area would contribute to the welfare of the public by increasing activity level and vibrancy in the 200 block of South Santa Fe in the downtown area. So those findings would support option 1 or 2. We're recommending option 2 with incorporating those conditions that we have listed on page 9 and 10. And we would stand for any questions that you have. Obviously, Mr. Walker's more familiar with the project and where it is at this point than we are, but we want to compliment him on a very good submittal, which we think allows the board to get a good picture for what's being proposed here.
You're right, Dean, that was a mouthful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
At least I didn't read the whole legal description. So.
Okay, we'll bring it back here to the board. Does the board have any questions of staff? Okay.
Is there any graphic or picture that the board would want to refer back to? And if not, we would want to hear from Mr. Walker and just get his comments specifically on the need and desire for the 542 square foot area to meet Yaya's needs, and then also the thinking behind the support posts and footing design for the canopy and the fence. And so again, most of our others, it's just been a freestanding fence barrier that is surface mounted to the sidewalk or plaza, but this is entirely different because of the structural aspects of the canopy. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much. Guy Walker, 500 Graves Boulevard. In terms of the size, I think Dean said it the way we were thinking of it in terms of the scale of that facade, that we felt like the size was appropriate in that way and didn't really detract from the building. And then I think from the restaurant's perspective, they're very, I don't know what the right word is, but maybe eager to serve the Salina community with outdoor dining because there's not a lot of it. And so they felt like they didn't want it to appear as an afterthought, you know, like they just threw a couple of tables out there. As Dean mentioned, the inside of the restaurant seats, I think it's closer to like 150. And, or you said 100?
I think 132.
132?
Yeah.
And so that, you know, they wanted to make sure that it felt like a space where there was an experience that went along with it and not just like, you know, hey, we threw some tables out on the sidewalk and we hope you go out there. They really want it to be a part of the restaurant experience. So I think that was the other reason for the size. The posts and footings that Dean mentioned that are part of the, you know, they're structural in nature, so they would go below they're not just attached to the sidewalk. We would certainly welcome that being part of the license agreement, that if we ever remove it, we would restore the sidewalk back to its original condition. Totally, completely understand that. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was after talking further with Yaya's, they did want us to ask about the possibility of heat, but the way they described it is they would, if they ever did it, they would like to do it where they're the kind of heating elements that are just tucked up in the corner, up at where the canopy meets the building. So you wouldn't see them. They wouldn't be the freestanding ones with like propane. They would be like tucked up in that corner. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up so it wasn't a surprise if we came back and asked for that. So I think other than that, I think Dean characterized the project very well. Obviously, we're excited to get it completed and get it open and serving the community. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Are the tables mounted on the concrete? They're freestanding, right?
They're freestanding,
okay.
yeah. They can be moved around. That was, I think, one of Yaya's concerns was that they may have tried to put too much out there. So I think, to Dean's point, if circulation becomes a problem, they might take one of the larger tables out and to make sure it felt, didn't feel crowded and things like that. But there is a gate. There will be a gate on the fence, obviously, so that you can get out of the space.
Anything else?
Yeah, we did note right here that looks maybe a little crowded in terms of accessing the gate. So obviously they're not going to be mounted, so there's flexibility in adjusting their location. But that is the exit gate to get out, in addition to the main entrance of the restaurant. So.
Okay. One of the questions I have for you, Mr. Walker, is the color of the fence and the tables and chairs, that bronze top. Is that the same color as the windows?
Actually, the windows, I don't know why it's like this on the drawing. I actually think the plan is for it to all be black. The windows are black.
Okay.
It's actually not an anodized. We didn't do anodized. It's like a black Kynar paint, I think is what they call it. It's supposed to be very, very durable. And the overhead canopies are black as well. So I think the intent is that the fence will also be black. It showed up on the drawing that way, but that style, the design matches the fence that we're putting back to separate the rear courtyard from the rest of the public right-of-way. And so the intent is that it would match.
Okay. And so I'm looking there on page 5, paragraph 9, where it mentions the bronze top appearance of the fascia sport posts. And so you're saying that will all be black?
Yeah, I think I forgot to mention that. I do think, yes, the plan is to make that black.
And that was not based on anything that they told us. It was our reviewing the drawings and
interpretation of the drawing. I agree.
What it was and appeared to be a bronze taupe on the drawings we reviewed, and so that's how we described it. But it's good to clarify
yes,
that
absolutely.
Those will be black in color, not as bronze and taupe as we described it.
Okay. And my other question was back on the on that same paragraph about the license agreement that the City Commission has. Now, is that final? And that's a final agreement on the canopy?
Yes, it's been approved by the City Commission. So, Dustin, if you could go back to the site plan and zoom out a little bit. So, the concept, and I need you to zoom out some more, I think, all the way so we can see Fifth Street. So the concept, we're talking about a specific license agreement for these sidewalk improvements, but a license agreement is a concept for the City Commission authorizing private installations in public right-of-way. So these spaces here, because they're not public parking spaces, they're dedicated to the support of the hotel. This drop-off area here is actually for the hotel's use, but it's in the public right-of-way for Mulberry. And then this canopy over here, those were all presented to the City Commission as private improvements in the public right-of-way, and the City Commission approved each of those elements. So even if the sidewalk dining were not approved per se, the canopy could still be.
And that's where I was headed with that, Dean, was that the fence then would be attached to the already approved canopy support posts and the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. So for it being able to be removed then would be just come from that the second post on the sidewalk.
The thing that makes this different from most of the other sidewalk dining is that a sidewalk dining at another location, the restaurant turns into a different use. The fence is no longer needed. It's just picked up and removed. If Yaya's leaves this location 10 years from now or whatever, and the likelihood of this canopy being removed is pretty remote. The canopy would stay, but
the fence could
come out as it relates to the dining area.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. And the other thing that's probably the other question I had was more for staff. I was looking in the recommendations. I didn't see anything in those 9 recommendations that specifically mentioned the size that was mentioned over in your analysis in number 1. Do we need to mention that? In
your motion, you should
motion.
indicate that you are, and it, part of it is if your motion, if you adopt the findings that we provided for you in attachment A, if you made those findings basically, your finding is that the additional dining area would be justified. But I would say that if you're choosing option 1 or number 2, you should indicate in your motion that you are, in your support, you are supportive of the 542 square foot
That would
size.
be the findings in attachment A?
Yes.
Okay.
If you agree with those findings, you're saying that you support that you think the additional size is justified.
It's going to be a long motion.
Well, you don't have to recite the conditions if you say that the maker of the motion wants to recommend option 2 with the conditions outlined by staff and based on the findings on attachment A. That's really all that would be necessary.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Dean. Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Walker?
I have a question, yeah. So the gate will be opening the outside, or it will be a swing door open both side, inside and outside?
I think it has to swing out in order for egress, yeah, for like fire code. Maggie's, the architect's shaking her head, yeah.
Yeah.
Swing out. So the question is like, it might become the safety hazard during the windy day, like, if it swings out, somebody's
Oh, it'll
walking.
have it'll have a latch that would.
It will have a latch. Okay. Yeah, that was the question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
The gate is required, there's some form of gate is required just so people can exit that area and get out to the sidewalk, so, and not have to go back through the building, so.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for any discussion. Is there any further? Seeing none, I guess I'd entertain a motion.
So what we tried to do to simplify option 2 is to approve the agreement subject to conditions. So if there was a motion for option number 2, that would automatically incorporate those
All 9.
conditions, all 9. And if the maker of the motion wanted to incorporate those 9 conditions, and then just indicate that the recommendations based on the findings noted in attachment A, then that would be a good motion that would communicate your desires to the City Commission.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Go
to
for it,
Go
Carla.
ahead, Carla.
Option number 2, with the staff's recommendation of the 9 conditions listed in our report, and also support of attachment A that the staff has prepared for us for this report.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. I'm not going to reread that whole thing. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
We will have that recorded in the minutes, so,
Thank you.
and communicate that on to the City Commission.
Looks like we have the next one with the same,
The next one is I guess we call it a twin, a companion. The primary difference is you're familiar with the hotel, you're familiar with the Yaya's plan. I've showed you the floor plan with Yaya's in the south, or with Starbucks in the southwest corner. The primary difference here is that Starbucks has no plans to serve alcoholic beverages, and as such, they're not required to have that fence. The other thing that I would point out that's it's probably confusing to Mr. Walker, it's been confusing a little bit to staff, and we hope it's not confusing in our report, but the sidewalk dining area we're referring to is 132 square feet along Santa Fe. The property line, right-of-way line for Mulberry is actually out here, and so there's, by our calculation, there is 12 feet of private property owned by Lighthouse Properties between the Mulberry Street right-of-way and the face of the building. And so this part here is what they'll be leasing from Lighthouse Properties. This part here is what you are considering, which is essentially an area that's only about 5.5 to 6 feet in depth and 24 feet in length, and would only contain 132 square feet. There would be no barrier. Starbucks does not serve alcoholic beverages. There's no requirement for a separation barrier. We're talking about the same type of canopy in this area that we may or may not have interpreted to be bronze and taupe in color, but is actually black. And the furniture that's been proposed is rated for outdoor use and has a commercial use warranty. So again, the canopy in question was addressed through the separate license agreement, and it's interesting, maybe it's a matter of interpretation because John prepared this report, but in his report he says the canopy would be pre-finished with the black fascia and soffit and will be identical to the canopy over the hotel's main entrance. So the answer is that all of the canopy area will be black, and no portion of it will be bronze or taupe. The same thing applies as it relates to the parking situation. There is parking located to the east, or will be located to the east across 5th Street. There's a parking lot on site here. There's these spaces, and so there's well over 100 spaces available in the vicinity for the hotel and the 2 restaurant operations, as well as some on-street parking. So this one is smaller. It's not nearly as complicated. We're not dealing with fence or barrier questions, and the question of the canopy has been addressed. So we have the same general 9 conditions that apply across the board to these outdoor dining areas, and there's no need to make findings about the size. It's just a question of whether you think it is well designed, whether it will obstruct any pedestrian circulation or usage, and whether you think this will also contribute to the welfare of the public by increasing street level activity in the 200 block south. So again, these renderings are extremely helpful to visualize what that will look like, and the Starbucks one is probably the most simple request we've had, just because the fact it doesn't involve the fencing barrier. So, and it's less than 200 square feet. So with that, we'd be open to any questions that you have. But again, just to clarify, you're being asked to review this area here, which is on the public sidewalk, and while this is on the sidewalk, it's actually not on property that's titled to the city of Salina. So that is not, it's part of Starbucks operation, but you're only considering this aspect right here.
All right. Thank you, Dean. The applicant want to come up and address anything else, or did you cover it pretty well in the?
I think I covered it pretty well. The only difference, I guess, that I wanted to explain was this, the canopy, this one and then the one over the entrance that John referred to are different than the Yaya's one. That's supported obviously by the building, excuse me, with, and it's also at a different height. It's more substantial, and it's, I think the front facade of it is actually, I think, almost 18 inches. It fits in the signboard of the hotel, and the Yaya's one is below that, just above the windows. And we kind of did that on purpose so that the restaurant had its own identity. Primary reason we did this one, and obviously the one over the entrance, was because we were trying to protect, you know, people coming in and out of the hotel from rain and things, but a big reason why we did the cover here was sun. That's on the southwest corner, and it just kind of gets hammered like all year. So we thought it would be a lot more bearable inside and out with a cover, without having to put blinds on the windows and things like that.
You're referring to this?
That one, yeah. It matches
this,
that one almost identical, almost exactly. So I just wanted to
these
clarify.
are the supports for the canopy as opposed to ground support.
Correct, right, exactly. So other than that, I think it was pretty straightforward. The furniture is meant to be outside. It's durable and I think has a good warranty, so that should wear well and somewhat protected by the cover. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Walker? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bring it back to the board for any discussion. Is there any?
So in this case, we're also recommending option 2, which would be approval with the 9 conditions and based on the findings that we've provided in attachment A.
No further discussion on the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on item 3.2.
I move that we follow suit with staff's option number 2 to make the approval recommendation to the City Commission, following the possible findings from, is this attachment A, that the city has provided, along with the 9 conditions of approval listed on pages 8 and 9 of our agenda.
I can second it.
I have a motion and a second. Excellent. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
We'll draft and it's for you to review and for them to review, get feedback on it, and schedule the time.
Thanks for coming back. Mr. Walker was here last night, so for the Heritage Commission, so.
All right. Okay, Dean, let's move, let's move right along to 4.1.
Okay, your administrative items that we have are relate to the presentation of the annual report, and what we have here is the City Commission wants each of its appointed boards and commissions to submit a report at the end of the year just concluded, so they can talk about, review the membership, date of appointment, reappointment, are there openings on the board, are the boards active, do they meet a lot, are they well attended, those type of things. So we have prepared a report where we tried to summarize the activities for 2019, and you held 17 meetings in 2019, which is actually pretty busy. There were 22 applications that were referred to the board. There was 21 for certificates of compatibility and 1 for a sidewalk cafe license. That was for the Barolo Grill. And then there was some additional activity relating to the campus for the KU School of Medicine, where they expanded to the south. We pointed out that the board currently has 6 appointed members out of 7 spots. We've had our chair submit his letter of resignation, as he is going to be moving from the community, and we'll let him speak to that, but that will put us at 5 appointed members with 2 openings. We've identified some ongoing goals that we've had, and we're certainly going to ask you for your input and assistance. We have what staff would call a massive downtown arts and entertainment ordinance, where we're trying to address food trucks, sidewalk entertainment, sidewalk vending, public art installations, murals, use of public parking lots, special events. I guess Dustin's job was the, what do we call it, the pedicabs and horse-drawn carriages and multimodal transportation anyway. We're trying to draft ordinances and regulations to get out in front of those types of activities. We've had a horse and buggy operate downtown, but we don't have any operating rules or anything relating to animal welfare or the hours of operation or appropriate locations or having a local license or any of those things. So we're working in that direction, and that's going to be a large item in 2020. And we still have future projects in the works. You have some of the river renewal projects are still ongoing. The proposed car museum, Stifel Theater renovations that are ongoing. So those are among staff's goals, is just to coordinate with this board to make sure we have smooth and timely review of those types of projects. On Exhibit A, we have done our best to summarize the membership. We would ask you to look at phone numbers, email addresses, contact information for any of you, and if you see something that's out of date or misspelled or is the wrong number, please let staff know and we'll get those corrected. But that is there for you to review to make sure we have the current and correct information. We've also provided our record of meeting attendance and activity. We think our math is pretty good, although we found one where we had our percentages mixed up. But if you think we have missed meetings that you attended or things of that nature, you could bring that to staff's attention as well. And then Exhibit C is just kind of a reminder to you of all the, if you reflect back on 2019, that's quite a bit of activity and quite a number of cases that this body has reviewed, and quite diverse different projects and locations. So what we would do is get any comments, corrections, additions that board members might want to make, and then if there's ones that you just want to get with us after the meeting or follow up that's out of date or needs corrected, you could share that with staff. But we've prepared this with the idea that if you're satisfied that the report reflects what you did last year, that you would make a motion to transmit this report to the City Commission on your behalf.
Thank you, Dean. Bring it back to the board. Has everybody had a chance to review the the report. I guess I hadn't realized till I read it that Sharp Performance was this year. Seemed like that was a long time ago that we did that one.
There was a number on some of the other boards where I looked at them, and I swear they were in 2018, and they were actually last year. So we reviewed all your agendas, and we think that's a pretty accurate summation of all the cases that came before you. So this board has been active, and that's a good indicator that the downtown is active. So
Very well.
and I guess I would note, and I think Ms. Gillum is aware of this, but we have building permit and plans for the Stifel Theater Tower restoration that have come in for our review. So that's moving forward.
Great. All right, well, if there's no corrections or additions to the report, I'd entertain a motion or accept a motion that we forward this to
It would just be to transmit this report to the City Commission on the board's behalf. So
I'll make a motion that we transmit this to the City Commission on our behalf. Everything looks accurate.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and will be transmitted to the City Commission. All right.
they may be surprised and pleased about how active you've been. So that's compared to some years in the past, 17 is a lot of meetings, and 20+ cases is a lot of cases. So
I think the streetscape thing, getting closer to completion, really picked things up too quite a bit.
yeah.
Yeah, you drive downtown, you see a lot of this stuff that we've talked about being done.
Yeah, and you actually can drive downtown and see
Yeah,
it.
you can drive downtown. I get a kick out of everybody parking in the middle. They're pushing that 15 minutes sometimes.
Yeah, it's supposed to be loading and unloading, but I guess everybody has their own definition.
Moving on to other business, as Dean alluded to, I've submitted my resignation, accepted a position with another company that'll be taking me out of state. And as much as I enjoy this board and being on it, and as exciting as the upcoming year or two are going to be, I'm not going to fly in on Thursday afternoons to attend this. Plus, not being a Salina resident is going to kind of
That would kind of
kick me out.
muddy the water. So
I'll still be a resident of Salina and Saline County for another 2 or 3 months, but I'll be working in California. But looks like it's going to be a fun year. I appreciate all the assistance and everything from staff. I'm sorry John's not here, because John's really helped me out a lot in the last 6 months. So my best to him, my best to the board, and I guess you guys get to do an election next meeting.
yeah, we'll have an item when our next regular meeting to appoint a replacement chair. So
Gary will be surprised.
yeah.
Well, good luck in California.
Thank you.
It
Appreciate
happened
it,
in
man.
the Planning Commission, where we had Planning Commission has one representative on the Board of Zoning Appeals and one on the Heritage Commission, and they nominated an absent member to be on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So don't be gone next week, or next time.
Fortunately, they accepted, but there is a risk if you're not here. But as far as any staff unfinished or other business, as I said, our only thing was we mentioned that the plans were received in the permit application for restoration of the Stifel Theater Tower, and so John and other staff members will be involved in that, and hopefully we'll start seeing some activity in that direction. But I can't tell you exactly when your next meeting will be, but if we start adding it up, this is our 4th and 5th sidewalk dining license cafe application. So we'll we'll see if there's more to come on that as they start to come online. But with the streetscape project, it was pretty difficult for anything to get going there. But 5 is more than we had when we started. So I think we got it mostly right in our ordinance and our review process, but I anticipate there may be some adjustments that we'll make to that to report back to you, because you do have an important role in reviewing the applications. So we'll keep you informed if there are changes in that regard.
Thank you. Anybody else on the board have any other unfinished business to address? No, and seeing no public for a public forum, I guess we're ready to move to adjourn.
I move we adjourn our January 23rd meeting.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. We are adjourned.